The yellow kitchen timer buzzed against the conference table hard enough to rattle Grant Vale's coffee. I reached over and stopped it at 3 hours, 47 minutes, and 12 seconds. That, I said, pointing to the recovery dashboard behind me, is how long it took us to restore the uniform tracking database during Friday's backup drill. Our target is 90 minutes. Grant leaned back in his chair and laughed. It wasn't a big laugh. That would have been easier. It was a tired little burst through his nose, the kind meant to let everybody know the serious person in the room had heard something ridiculous. "Your paranoia wastes everyone's time," he said. My husband, Luke, sat 2 chairs away, turning his wedding ring with his thumb. Grant clicked his wireless mouse. My slide vanished, replaced by the quarterly technology budget. "We're done testing," he said. "Stop scheduling drills and move on." Behind him, the wall monitor flashed as the recovery meetings disappeared from the shared calendar one by one. Grant watched them go with an expression I recognized a second too late: relief. The room was on the second floor of our main laundry plant, directly above the steam tunnel. Every few minutes, the floor gave a faint shiver as another load of hospital sheets dropped into the wash line below us. The table smelled like dry erase cleaner and the cinnamon gum Sheila Park chewed when she wanted to keep herself from saying something expensive. Sheila was our plant engineer. She sat across from me with her pen hovering over a maintenance log. Thomas Reed, who managed route dispatch, lowered his eyes to the legal pad where he had drawn a little ambulance beside the words, 4 hours? Renee Cole from payroll stared at Grant. Nobody came to my rescue. People rarely do in conference rooms. They study their papers and tell themselves they'll check on you later. I unplugged the timer from its charging cable and slipped it into the pocket of my cardigan. Grant moved through his budget presentation as if nothing had happened. He was good at that. He could make an ugly decision feel like a software update you had agreed to install. He showed us the savings from retiring 2 local storage arrays. He explained that consolidating our servers would reduce licensing, cooling, and support costs. He had cut nearly $200,000 from the technology budget over 18 months, and he knew exactly how much respect that bought him. "The cloud environment gives us geographic redundancy," he said. "We're not running a museum." Sheila stopped chewing. I looked down at the printed recovery card in front of me. The card had Friday's date, the systems tested, the names of everyone present, and the time the database became usable, not merely visible, not merely connected, but usable by an actual route clerk scanning an actual garment tag. 3 hours, 47 minutes, 12 seconds. At the bottom was the remediation box, still blank. Grant ended the meeting 11 minutes early. Chairs rolled back, laptops snapped shut, people collected insulated mugs and folded papers. Luke waited until Grant had left before he stood. "I'll meet you downstairs," he said quietly. That was Luke's version of touching my shoulder when other people could see. Tomas lingered near the door. He was a broad man with a shaved head and an impressive collection of cheerful neckties. That morning's tie featured tiny yellow delivery vans. "For what it's worth," he said, "I enjoyed wasting my Friday watching a gray bar move from 48% to 49%. It was 51 minutes of your life." I counted. "You took a lunch break." I ate in front of the gray bar. That's commitment. Renee came around the table and took my recovery card before I could put it in my folder. "Is this the copy for the audit archive?" "Yes." She looked at the blank remediation box. "What do I write here?" "Nothing yet." "That seems like something." "It is." Across the room, Sheila closed her maintenance binder. The restore wasn't the only problem. Renee glanced toward the open door. Sheila lowered her voice. "The server room cooling alert came in at 2:14 Friday morning. Grant's team cleared it without a physical inspection." "The temperature normalized," I said, "after 26 minutes. Then the backup appliance started throttling." Tomas's joking expression disappeared. "Those things connected?" "I don't know yet," Sheila said, "which is why human beings investigate events instead of putting green check marks next to them. A cart of damp blue surgical gowns banged along the concrete hallway outside. Steam rolled past the conference room windows, clouding the lower panes. Renee slipped the recovery card into her binder. "I'll scan this with the other two," she said. "Keep the original too." She studied my face. "You think he's going to ask for them back?" "I think paper gets much more interesting when someone wants it gone." I found Grant downstairs between the chemical room and the service corridor, typing into his phone with both thumbs. He was 43, 6 years older than Luke, and carried himself like a man who had learned that impatience looked better in an expensive shirt. "Grant." He finished his sentence before looking up. "Naomi, you can't cancel the recovery program in the middle of a remediation cycle." "I canceled meetings. You said we were done testing." "Yes. The database missed target by 2 hours and 17 minutes. It was a test environment. It was restored from the production backup, and it restored in almost 4 hours." He slid his phone into his pocket. "Do you know what 4 hours costs?" "I do. I wrote the business impact analysis." "No, do you know what your drills cost? Sheila's time, Thomas's time, my team's time, overtime for the verification staff. We have a hospital contract repricing in October and 2 hotels cutting inventory. Celia wants margin." Celia was his mother, Luke's mother, my mother-in-law and the chief executive of Vale Textile Services. Grant could make all 4 facts occupy a room without saying any of them. "Then take the risk to Celia," I said. "Show her the result and get her acceptance in writing." His jaw shifted slightly. That was the first real answer he gave me. "You've always had a flair for paperwork," he said. "You hired me for it." "My mother hired you. After your outage." His eyes hardened. 3 years earlier, a storage controller had failed before dawn on a Monday. We had clean uniforms stacked to the ceiling and 40 root trucks parked in the yard because dispatch couldn't tell which cages belonged on which vehicle. Grant's team restored the system by mid-afternoon. By then, 2 hospitals had sent procurement managers to stand in our lobby, and Luke had been driving handwritten route sheets between plants. I had worked at a regional food distributor then, running continuity planning for warehouses where a 4-hour outage could turn a freezer full of inventory into an insurance claim. Celia recruited me 6 months after I married Luke. Grant never forgave the sequence. To him, the marriage always came first, followed by a job I had not earned and a new department built around a failure he wanted forgotten. "The outage was caused by hardware we've retired," he said. "The drill tested the architecture you replaced it with." "I'm aware of what it tested." "Then why did the results surprise you?" "It didn't." Steam hissed behind the wall. That small statement landed harder than his laughter upstairs. "If it didn't surprise you," I said, "why wasn't it in the migration risk register?" He stepped closer, just enough that anyone passing would have assumed we were having a private family conversation. "Be careful, Naomi." "With what?" "With turning professional judgment into a loyalty test." He walked away before I could answer. Luke was waiting near the employee entrance holding my lunch bag. He had tucked it under his arm beside a stack of folded route maps. His navy work shirt was dark between the shoulder blades from spending the morning on the plant floor. "Turkey sandwich?" he asked. It was when I packed it. "The break room refrigerator has its own climate system. Could be anything by now." I took the bag from him. Through the small wired glass window in the door, I could see Grant crossing the shipping floor. Employees in white coats moved around him, pushing cages of sorted uniforms beneath the strip lights. "You knew," I said. Luke's gaze stayed on the window. "Knew what?" "That he was going to stop the drills. He mentioned he thought they were too frequent." "When?" "At Mom's on Sunday. I waited. We were grilling," he added, as though charcoal explained why he had not told me. "You sat in that meeting and watched me walk into it." I didn't know he was going to say it like that. "How did you think he was going to say it?" Luke rubbed the back of his neck, probably with more slides. I almost laughed. That was the problem with Luke. He could find the one soft spot in an argument and press it without seeming to. Almost. He called me paranoid in front of 8 department heads. I heard him. You also heard him cancel a control we need for our insurance renewal. Then document your objection. I did. It's in the report he laughed at. The shipping door opened, and a driver came through carrying a scanner with a cracked orange case. Luke, Bay 3's missing 6 food service cages. I'll be there in 5. The driver nodded and disappeared down the corridor. Luke waited until the door shut. Grant's under pressure, he said. The migration is the only reason we made the hospital pricing work. Mom's watching him. The bank's watching Mom. He thinks you're building a case that he cut too deep. Did he tell you that over burgers, too? He didn't have to. He knew the restore would be slow. You don't know that. He just told me the result didn't surprise him. Luke looked tired then, not defensive. That made it worse. I wanted anger from him because anger would have meant he was standing somewhere. Tiredness floated above the floor and called itself fairness. Come home tonight, he said. We'll talk without industrial dryers vibrating our teeth. I am coming home. I mean, come home. Don't stay until 9 writing a memo that makes tomorrow harder. Tomorrow is already scheduled. He gave me a long look. That right there. What? The way you say things like the calendar is a natural force. He left for Bay 3 before I could ask what natural force he preferred. At 5:30, the plant changed shifts. Cars streamed out past the flagpole while the evening crews crossed the lot in 2s and 3s. I stayed at my desk with Friday's system logs open on one monitor and the migration plan on the other. Grant's project timeline showed the old storage array decommissioned 6 weeks earlier. The recovery procedure still referenced its local snapshot cache. That explained 43 minutes of Friday's delay. It did not explain the next 2 hours. I opened the access report. 7 attempts had failed before an administrator authenticated successfully. The successful login belonged to a contractor in Arizona who'd been asleep when the drill began. Grant's team had escalated through 3 internal employees before calling him. I wrote the facts without adjectives. At 6:12, I attached the report to our governance record and selected Risk Acceptance Required. Grant's name populated automatically as the control owner. At 6:14, he rejected it. Reason. Testing methodology does not reflect production conditions. I stared at the sentence until the monitor dimmed. Then I took the yellow timer from my cardigan pocket and set it beside the keyboard. I had bought it at a grocery store after the old storage outage. The timer was meant for kitchens, with a magnet on the back and buttons large enough to hit with flour-covered fingers. I used it because people lied casually about time. 10 minutes became 20. An hour became most of a morning. Back online became the login page appeared once. A timer had no diplomacy. Neither did a payroll deadline or a hospital loading dock. At home, Luke had made spaghetti. He always cooked too much pasta and never enough sauce. 2 bowls sat on the kitchen island, grated Parmesan melting into pale clumps. He poured me a glass of water. I'm not fighting with you while you're holding cheese, he said. I put the cheese down. You're still within reach of it. I sat. He took the stool across from me instead of the one beside mine. For a few minutes, we ate with the refrigerator humming behind us. On the counter, his phone lit twice with messages he didn't check. Finally, he said, "Can you let 1 quarter go?" I set down my fork. 1 quarter without a full drill, he said. Give Grant room to finish the migration. Do tabletop reviews. Update contacts. Whatever else you do. Whatever else I do. That came out wrong. It came out accurately. Luke pressed his fingertips against his eyes. I'm asking you as your husband. That's why I can't answer you as Grant's employee. He is my brother. And you're asking me to make his risk invisible. I'm asking you not to blow up the family over a backup test. There it was, a 4-hour failure reduced to my temperament, a professional objection carried into our kitchen and laid beside the Parmesan. I got up and took my bowl to the sink. Behind me, Luke said, "Mom wants all of us at dinner Sunday." "Of course she does. Naomi, I'll go." He was quiet for a moment. "Are you going to run another test?" "Not without authorization." The breath he released sounded almost grateful. I hated that gratitude enough to tell him the rest. "But the completed results stay in the audit archive." He looked at my back. "Why wouldn't they?" I rinsed sauce from the bowl and watched it curl pink around the drain. "That," I said, "is what I'm going to find out." At 8:03 the next morning, my administrator credentials stopped working. At 8:07, an email from Grant arrived announcing that recovery testing had been reclassified as an IT function. My role would be limited to policy maintenance and business impact documentation. At 8:11, he sent a second email. "Please return all technical recovery materials to my office by noon." I read it twice, then opened the archive index. Friday's recovery card was already there, scanned at 7:46 by Renee. Beneath it were the 2 previous results, each with logs, elapsed times, and unresolved remediation notes. 3 completed drills, 3 worsening numbers. I forwarded Grant's email to the governance record, wrote down the time my access had failed, and placed the yellow timer in the top drawer of my desk. Then I locked it. At 11:56, I carried a banker's box into Grant's office. He had moved into the corner room after the migration budget was approved. The windows looked over the loading bays, where white veil trucks backed into concrete slots while guides in reflective vests waved them in. Grant kept his desk almost empty. Laptop, phone, black notebook, one framed photograph from a charity golf tournament. I set the box in front of him. "What's this?" "The technical recovery materials you requested." He lifted the lid. Inside were printed runbooks, vendor contact sheets, architecture diagrams, and 2 encrypted test drives in tamper-evident sleeves. "Where are the test reports?" "In the audit archive." I asked for all technical recovery materials. The completed reports are corporate governance records. Grant took off his glasses and folded them carefully. "I'm the control owner. You're the subject of several open remediation items. I'm the IT director." "Yes?" He waited for the rest. There wasn't any. "Bring me the originals," he said. "Renee controls the archive. Then tell Renee I authorized their release. I'll tell her you asked." A truck horn sounded below us. Grant turned toward the window, then back to me. "You think this makes you look principled. I think it makes the records easy to locate. You've been waiting for me to fail since you got here. The accusation came out without heat. That made it sound rehearsed. I rested my hands on the edge of the box. "I've been waiting for you to finish fixing what the tests found. I did fix it. The migration fixes it. The migration caused 2 of the failures. That's your interpretation. The old procedure called a storage location that no longer exists, which is why we don't need your old procedure. The new procedure failed 7 logins." He leaned back. "Do you hear yourself? This is why people call it paranoia. You collect every imperfect moment and build a disaster out of it." "People?" His mouth tightened. "Or you?" I asked. He put his glasses back on. "You're no longer authorized to access technical systems. That includes requesting reports from my staff, attending infrastructure calls, or directing recovery exercises. If a department needs continuity support, they can request policy guidance. I'd like that in writing. It's in the email." The email says, "Recovery testing is now an IT function. The rest is new. I'm clarifying. Please clarify in writing." Grant gave a short laugh. "There it is." "What?" "The trap." I picked up the box lid, placed it neatly over the materials, and left it on his desk. "Send whatever version you're comfortable signing," I said. His email arrived 9 minutes later. "Naomi, to clarify our conversation, IT will manage technical recovery activity during the migration stabilization period. Your continued support with policy documentation and departmental readiness is appreciated. Thanks for your flexibility." Grant had not written that I was forbidden from talking to his staff. He had not written that I could not request reports. He had turned a removal of authority into an expression of gratitude. I saved the email to the governance record. Then I walked to payroll. Renee's office was behind a glass partition overlooking the time clock corridor. At shift change, 200 employees passed her door carrying lunch coolers and hairnets. She claimed the traffic helped her concentrate. When I entered, she was comparing two spreadsheets with the expression of someone discovering that numbers had lied to her personally. "Close the door," she said. I did. She turned her monitor toward me. Friday's restored payroll file is missing 3 days of union deductions. From the test environment? From the backup we tested. The live file is fine. The restored file ends on Tuesday night. I pulled the visitor chair closer. Was the backup timestamp current? It says Friday at 1 a.m. And the employee records? Current through Thursday. Time punches, pay rates, direct deposit changes, just not this deduction table. That doesn't make sense. Thank you. I was hoping you'd say something soothing, but confusion is also companionship. We checked the export job. Payroll data was copied in separate batches, and the union deduction table still pointed to the retired local array. The backup job reported success because the destination folder existed. It just contained a 4-day-old file. If we'd restored this after an outage, Renee said, people's checks would be wrong, and the ledger wouldn't match the remittance, which accounting would discover after everyone got paid. She leaned back and looked through the glass at the employees clocking in. What am I allowed to do with this? You found a payroll validation issue in a completed test. Correct your procedure and document it. Grant said technical recovery belongs to IT. Payroll validation belongs to payroll. Her mouth tilted. Policy guidance? Deeply appreciated. Renee corrected the process before noon. She added a separate timestamp check to the payroll validation sheet and sent the change to Grant, copying me. He replied only to her. Good catch. This is exactly the kind of departmental ownership the new model is designed to encourage. Renee printed the email and walked it to my office. He took 9 minutes, she said. He's getting slower. She laid it on my desk. I'm putting it in the archive. Why? Because someday I'd like to remember the moment I designed his new model 3 days before he did. Sunday dinner at Celia's started at 6 and felt late by 6:12. She lived in the brick house where Grant and Luke had grown up, 20 minutes from the plant. The furniture had been replaced over the years, but not rearranged. Luke could still cross the living room in the dark without touching anything. Celia served pot roast from a blue enamel Dutch oven. She was 68, compact, silver-haired, and capable of making a request sound like a conclusion everyone else had reached. Grant brought a bottle of red wine. His wife, Ellen, brought a lemon tart from a bakery Celia disliked, but always praised. Luke carried the salad we had assembled without speaking much to each other. At the table, Grant discussed the hospital contract. If we maintain the current technology savings, he said, we can hold their service rate and still protect margin. Celia cut a carrot with the side of her fork. If? We will. She looked at him. Then say will. We will. Luke nudged the serving dish toward me. More potatoes? No thanks. Celia's eyes moved between us and stopped. She noticed changes in a room the way Sheila noticed changes in machine noise. Naomi, she said, Grant tells me you're unhappy with the migration. Grant took a sip of wine. I'm unhappy with the recovery results. Same thing, he said. No, it isn't. Ellen studied her tart as if hoping it might need immediate medical attention. Celia set down her fork. Can the company operate on the new system? Yes. Can it recover? Yes. Grant's shoulders loosened. I continued. The last drill took 3 hours and 47 minutes to restore uniform tracking. Our approved target is 90 minutes. Payroll validation also found one stale table in the backup. Celia looked at Grant. Already corrected, he said. By payroll, under the new ownership model. Renee's face flashed through my mind. Celia turned back to me. What do you recommend? a documented remediation plan, another test after the migration stabilizes, and temporary manual procedures for route dispatch and payroll. That sounds reasonable, Luke said. Grant put down his wine glass. It sounds free. It isn't. Every test interrupts work. We have people billing overtime to watch loading screens so Naomi can tell us the obvious, that complicated systems take time. It wasn't obvious in your project risk register. Could we have one meal? Luke asked. The words were aimed at the middle of the table, where nobody had to own them. Celia folded her napkin once. Grant, submit the remediation plan. Naomi, no technical test until he says the migration is stable. You can update manual procedures. It was a compromise shaped exactly like Grant's position. All right, I said. He looked almost disappointed. After dinner, Ellen helped Celia wrap leftovers while Grant went outside to take a call. Luke stood at the sink rinsing plates. I dried because leaving would have made the evening about leaving. Celia brought me a pot roast container and lowered her voice. He's trying to save us money. I know. You're both very good at seeing what the other one misses. That isn't always what's happening. No. She pressed the lid down around the edges. But it is often enough that I can't afford for either of you to forget it. She handed me the container. Celia was not blind to Grant. She was invested in him. There was a difference, and it was harder to fight. On Monday, I began visiting departments with a clipboard instead of a laptop. Tomas and I pulled the emergency route packets from a locked cabinet beside dispatch. Half the manifests listed drivers who had changed routes. One hospital's receiving entrance had moved during construction. The food processing plants required seal numbers that our paper forms did not include. Manual procedures, Thomas said, are where optimism goes to die. We rebuilt the packets route by route. Sheila identified which wash lines could continue during a database outage and which could not. The tunnel washers stored their active formulas locally, but the garment sorting system needed central RFID data. Without it, clean uniforms would pile up at the rail with nowhere to go. We can run for 90 minutes, she said. Maybe 2 hours if Thomas stops sending us surprises. Those are called customers, he said. They're surprises with contracts. Renee created a payroll checklist that required 2 people to compare restored totals against the live control report. I stayed away from technical systems. I did not run a restore, touch a server, or ask Grant's staff for access. I taught people how to recognize the point where a computer problem became an operating decision. Grant noticed anyway. Department heads began receiving verbal instructions from him after our sessions. Thomas was told not to print full route packets because paper was wasteful. Sheila was told continuity discussions needed IT representation. Renee was asked to route any backup concerns directly to Grant. His follow-up emails were softer. Thanks for helping us streamline. Let's avoid duplicative effort. We all share the same goal. I saved everyone. At home, Luke stopped asking what I was working on. We talked about groceries, a dripping faucet, whether the bedroom fan made a clicking sound. At night, the silence between us seemed to organize itself. 2 weeks later, a regional carrier outage knocked our dispatch tablets offline for 53 minutes. The plant servers were fine. The cloud environment was fine. The cellular connection that let drivers reach either one was not. Thomas opened the locked cabinet and handed out the packets we had updated. Trucks left an average of 11 minutes late. The hospital route left on time because its driver had arrived early and knew exactly where the revised receiving entrance was. By 10, the tablets reconnected. Grant sent a company-wide message praising the resilience of the new operating model. Thomas appeared in my doorway holding a printed copy. New model, he said, apparently. I thought the paper was wasteful, only before it worked. He set the email beside the yellow timer, which had returned to the top of my desk but stayed there, unused. You want me to respond? No. That seems unhealthy. Put your actual departure times in the continuity log. Less satisfying. More durable. He gave me a small salute and left. That afternoon, Grant called me into his office. The banker's box was still against the wall behind his desk. He had not unpacked it. "Our cyber policy renews next month," he said. "I need the continuity sections of the questionnaire completed by Friday." "Which sections?" "Backup frequency, recovery capabilities, incident response, all the usual. I can provide the approved policies and completed test results. I need current state answers, not a history lesson. The completed tests are the current evidence. The architecture has changed since those tests. Then it needs a new test." He looked toward the loading bays. "We're not doing this again. Then I can't certify the recovery times." "I didn't ask you to certify them. I asked you to complete the questionnaire." "Who signs it?" "I do. Then I'll provide the records and you can answer from them." He turned back to me. "This renewal affects every contract we have. If the premium jumps because you insist on presenting routine migration issues like an emergency, people will lose more than meeting time." There were a dozen ways to hear that sentence. Grant had chosen all of them. "I'll send the policies and the 3 reports," I said. "Send the policies and the reports. Naomi, they're responsive records." His voice dropped. "I am telling you, as the director responsible for this renewal, what I need, and I'm telling you what exists." He dismissed me with a glance at his laptop. On Friday, I delivered the policies to the insurer's secure portal. The test results were not among the documents Grant authorized for upload, so I left them in the archive and noted their location in the internal evidence index. 3 weeks later, Grant invited me to the renewal call with 6 minutes' notice. I entered the conference room carrying a notebook. Luke was there from operations, Renee from finance, and Celia at the head of the table. Grant had already connected his laptop to the wall monitor. A woman named Dana Kim joined from the insurer. She asked about revenue, endpoint protection, employee training, and incident response. Grant answered smoothly. He described the migration as complete and our controls as mature. Dana looked down at something off-screen. "One last item," she said. "Can you send me the last 3 completed recovery test results, including actual restoration times and remediation evidence?" Grant's hand stopped on the mouse. Across the table, Renee opened her binder. Grant recovered first. "Those were conducted during the transition," he said. "They're no longer representative of the environment." Dana Kim nodded as though he had told her the files were stored in a different cabinet. "I understand. I'd still like the reports." "We can provide a summary. The underlying results, please. All 3. Grant's fingers tightened around the mouse. "Some of the remediation notes are internal working documents." "That's fine. We're looking for the test scope, actual recovery times, data integrity validation, and evidence that failed controls were corrected." Renee turned 1 page in her binder. The sound was almost dainty. Dana continued. "Your application states quarterly testing. I have the dates listed here, but no supporting documentation." Grant glanced at me. I kept my hands folded over my notebook. "How quickly do you need them?" Celia asked. "By tomorrow would be helpful." "You'll have them today," she said. The call ended 4 minutes later. Grant closed his laptop. The screen behind him went blue, then black. For a moment, all 5 of us were reflected in it. Celia at the head of the table, Luke leaning forward with his elbows on his knees, Renee holding the binder, Grant behind his laptop, and me with nothing in front of me except a blank page. Grant looked at Renee. "Why did you bring that?" "My payroll renewal notes are in here." "The audit reports?" "Also in here." I told Naomi to return all technical materials. Renee's eyebrows rose. "To you?" "Yes." "You don't control the audit archive." Grant turned to Celia. "This is exactly the problem. We have people treating internal records like personal property." "Are the reports complete?" Celia asked me. "They contain the system logs, elapsed times, validation sheets, and open remediation. Send them to Dana." Grant pushed his chair back. "Mom." She asked for them. "She doesn't understand the migration context. Then send the context too." His face changed in a way only family would have caught. His expression remained calm, but the word mom had cost him. In the office, Celia had answered as chief executive, and he had answered as her son. Luke stood. "I have trucks waiting." Celia looked at him. "Sit down." He sat. She turned to Grant. "What did you put on the application?" "That we test quarterly." "What did you put for recovery?" "That we maintain tested backups capable of supporting critical operations." "Are those words true?" "The backups are tested." "That was not my question." Grant took a breath through his nose. "Yes, the statement is true." Celia looked at me. "Do you agree?" Grant's gaze landed on the side of my face. "We maintain backups," I said. "The last 3 tests completed. None met all recovery targets. The most recent one restored uniform tracking in 3 hours and 47 minutes, and payroll found a stale deduction table afterward." Luke stared at the carpet. Celia's voice stayed even. "Grant?" "The application does not ask whether every test met every internal target." "No," I said. "That's why the insurer asked for the evidence." Grant snapped his laptop shut. The sound made Renee blink. "Upload the reports," Celia said. "Both of you stay available." She left with Luke behind her. Grant remained at the table. Renee slid the binder into her bag and zipped it slowly. "You enjoyed that," he said to me. "No." "That's the problem with you, Naomi. You can do damage and pretend the absence of a smile makes it noble." Renee lifted her bag onto her shoulder. She answered a question. "I'm speaking to my sister-in-law. You're speaking in a company conference room." Grant gave her a long look. "Payroll has plenty to do today. It always does." When the door closed behind her, he leaned toward me. "If this renewal comes back with restrictions, every department pays for it. If the recovery fails, every department pays for that. You always have an answer." "I'd prefer a restore." I uploaded the 3 reports at 11:22. The portal generated a receipt. I saved that receipt to the governance record and sent copies to Celia, Grant, and Renee. Dana responded the next morning with 6 questions. By the end of the week, there were 19. The insurer wanted proof that administrative access did not depend on one identity system. It wanted restoration tested from immutable backup copies, not merely replicated data. It wanted payroll validation, route dispatch procedures, remediation owners, and dates. Grant answered each question as narrowly as he could. Dana kept asking the next one. On Thursday, she sent the renewal terms. The company could keep its existing coverage if we demonstrated remediation within 30 days. Otherwise, the ransomware sublimit would be cut in half, our deductible would triple, and the premium would rise enough to erase most of Grant's migration savings. Celia called us into her office. Her desk faced the plant floor through a wall of glass. Below, clean hospital linens moved through the folding line in white waves. Grant stood rather than taking a chair. "This is an underwriting overreaction," he said. "They see a slow test and imagine catastrophe." "They see 3 tests," Celia said, "during a migration." "Can you satisfy the conditions?" "Yes." "In 30 days?" "Yes." He answered too quickly. Celia looked at me. "Can he?" "I don't know. He removed me from the technical work. Based on what you do know, the access issue needs a real test. Payroll needs full data validation. Route dispatch already has a manual procedure." Grant folded his arms. "Because I authorized departmental readiness." I watched Celia absorb that. She had built Vale Textile Services from one laundry plant and a handful of hotel routes. She understood credit better than most people understood blame. She knew exactly what Grant was doing. She also needed him to succeed. "Grant leads remediation," she said. "Naomi observes and prepares the final continuity memo. You will both sign it." "I won't sign a result I can't verify," I said. "You'll be given access to verify it." Grant looked at me for the first time since we entered. Fine. His agreement worried me more than a fight would have. At home that night, Luke stood at the kitchen counter eating cold pot roast from Celia's plastic container. "You could use a plate," I said. "I could." He took another bite from his fork. I put my bag down. Are you angry with me? I don't know what I am. That must be comfortable. He set the fork on the lid. Grant thinks you set him up. Grant filled out the application. He thinks you kept those reports because you knew this would happen. I kept them because keeping them is my job. You had them sitting there like a loaded gun. They were backup drill reports, Luke. You know what I mean. I really don't. He wiped his mouth with a paper towel. You won. Mom put you in oversight. The insurer made Grant jump. Can you stop pushing now? What did I win? His hand went flat against the counter. That question, he said. That's why talking to you feels impossible. You make every answer sound stupid before I say it. I asked because I don't feel like I won anything. Grant's humiliated. So was I. He's my brother. You keep telling me that like it changes what happened. It changes what it costs. The kitchen went still. I looked at the container between us. Celia had written pot roast on the lid in black marker, as if the contents might try to pass themselves off as something else. Who pays that cost? I asked. Luke looked away. He slept in the guest room that night. Grant scheduled the recovery demonstration for the following Friday at 6 in the morning. He sent the invitation to me at 4:30 Thursday afternoon. When I arrived, the server room door was propped open. A portable cooling unit hummed beside the backup appliance, its exhaust hose snaking into the hallway. 2 migration contractors were already logged in. One of them was the Arizona administrator whose credentials had finally worked during the last drill. Grant handed me a printed test plan. Start time is 6, he said. I checked the wall clock. It was 5:53. When was the recovery environment mounted? Preparation isn't part of recovery. When? 5:20. The Arizona contractor kept his eyes on his screen. Sheila stood beside the portable cooler with her maintenance binder tucked under one arm. She met my gaze but said nothing. At 6, Grant started a stopwatch on his phone. The database came online in 54 minutes. He smiled for the first time in weeks. Thomas confirmed that the root screen loaded. Renee compared employee totals and signed the first page of her validation sheet. Grant sent the result to Dana before 7:15. Recovery target met. Prior finding remediated. He copied Celia and me. I stayed with Renee after the others left. You didn't finish, I said. The test plan only asked for head count and gross pay total. What about deductions? Not included. She opened her binder. Her new validation checklist had 9 steps. Grant's test plan used 2. She had written not tested beside the other 7. In the hallway, Sheila was unplugging the portable cooler. How long has that been here? I asked. Delivered yesterday. Temporary? Rental. Grant's budget code. Was the backup appliance still throttling? Not this morning, because of the cooler, and because they didn't pull from the full backup chain. The environment was mounted before we started. I looked through the server room window. Grant was laughing at something one of the contractors had said. Sheila tapped her maintenance binder. I have the delivery ticket, temperature readings, and mount time. The demonstration had restored the database. It had also paid for extra cooling, preloaded the environment, pre-authenticated the administrator, and skipped most of payroll's validation. It proved the system could recover if the recovery was partly completed before the clock began. I wrote the final continuity memo that afternoon. The first sentence said the 54-minute result could not be compared to prior tests because preparation activities had been excluded from elapsed time. The second said payroll data integrity had not been fully validated. The third recommended a complete test from an unmounted immutable copy. Grant came to my office at 5:18 with the memo in his hand. You're not submitting this. Celia asked for it. You observed a successful recovery. I observed part of one. The insurer doesn't need a dissertation on how servers work. The insurer specifically asked for actual restoration time and remediation evidence. He dropped the memo on my desk beside the yellow timer. Revise it. What should it say? That the recovery met target. It didn't. You watched the database come online in 54 minutes. I watched your team spend 40 minutes getting ready, then start the clock. That preparation would happen during a real event. And it would take time during a real event. His voice sharpened. Sign the result? No. He stood over my desk for another second, then picked up the memo. You are choosing this, he said. So are you. He left with my unsigned copy. I printed another and put it in the audit archive. Dana did not accept the demonstration. She asked for a full retest. Before Grant could schedule it, the real event began. At 4:37 on a Wednesday morning, my phone displayed an automated continuity alert. Multiple servers had been isolated after malicious encryption activity. The central identity service was unavailable. Dispatch tablets could not authenticate. Payroll could not connect. I drove to the plant under a sky the color of wet concrete. Grant was already in the server room, entering his password again and again while the login screen rejected him. The Arizona contractor was not answering. Sheila stood at the door with her maintenance binder. Renee had her payroll checklist. Thomas was opening the locked cabinet beside dispatch. Grant looked at me through the glass. For the first time since he had canceled the drills, he did not tell me to move on. I went to my office, unlocked the top drawer, and took out the yellow timer. Then I pressed start. The timer read 38 seconds when Grant came out of the server room. Keep everyone off the network, he said. Already sent. To who? Department heads. Printed contact tree. His eyes moved to the timer in my hand. This isn't a drill. I know. He looked as if he wanted to say more, but an engineer called his name from behind the glass. I carried the timer to dispatch and set it on Thomas's counter. Drivers were beginning to arrive, coffee in one hand, phones in the other. The wall monitors showed gray login boxes instead of routes. Thomas had opened the emergency cabinet. Updated route packets covered his desk in separate stacks, each held together with a colored clip. Hospital routes here, he said. Hotels there. Food service gets the green sheets with seal numbers. How many drivers can leave? Anyone whose truck was loaded before the scanners went down? 23, maybe 25. Send the hospitals first. Luke came through the door wearing the same clothes he had worn the day before. What do you need? He asked. It was the first time in weeks he had asked me that without meaning something else. Confirm the cages against the paper manifests. 2 people per truck. Write every change on the route copy and keep the driver's copy separate. He nodded. What about the late loads? Hold them until Sheila tells us what the plant can process. Luke reached for the hospital stack. Thomas put a hand on it. Your operations. You point. I've loaded a truck before. Then point while loading. Luke almost argued, then he took a clipboard instead. At the plant floor entrance, Sheila had stopped the RFID sorter. Clean uniforms hung overhead in long, moving rows, suspended from rails like empty people. The tunnel washers continued to turn behind glass panels clouded with steam. The active wash formulas are local, she said. We can finish what's in process. I've disconnected the garment sorter and the billing stations. How much room do we have? About 90 minutes before the clean rail fills. 2 hours if we slow the dryers. What happens after that? We stop washing. The exact limit she had given us during the continuity review. Do it, I said. She glanced toward the server room. Grant will want production kept up. Grant is working on identity. You own the plant. Sheila's chin lifted by half an inch. I do. At 5:28, 16 trucks left the yard with handwritten changes on their manifests. The remaining hospital routes followed 19 minutes later. A food processing driver came back for a missing seal sheet, swore affectionately at Thomas, and made his dock window with 3 minutes to spare. The plant stopped washing at 6:47. The yellow timer showed 2 hours, 10 minutes. Grant's team had isolated the affected servers, but the central identity service was still unavailable. Their administrative accounts depended on the same system they needed to restore. The emergency local credentials in the fire safe had been rotated during migration. The sealed sheet had the old passwords. Grant stood at the conference table with a clean laptop, 2 engineers, and the migration diagram from the banker's box I had returned to him. His shirt sleeves were rolled above his elbows. A dark patch of sweat had formed between his shoulder blades. He was not panicking. Grant became colder as situations worsened. "We rebuild identity first," he said, "then restore the replicated environment." "From which recovery point?" I asked. "Latest clean snapshot." "How are you determining clean?" "Endpoint telemetry." "The replicated data may have been encrypted before the servers isolated." "We know." Renee entered carrying a stack of printed payroll control reports. "Payroll runs tomorrow night," she said. "I need access by noon tomorrow to validate deductions and direct deposits." Grant did not look up. "We'll be online before then." "If we aren't, we will be." She set the reports on the table. "I'm going to prepare for the answer you didn't give." One of Grant's engineers found a recovery credential held by our cloud provider, but activating it required 2 internal approvals and a recorded verification call. Grant had designed that control himself after a contractor left with access 2 years earlier. The process took 56 minutes. He hated every one of them, but it worked. By 8:15, his team had a clean identity server running in an isolated environment. They began testing backup copies. The newest snapshot carried signs of the same malicious encryption. The one before it mounted cleanly but failed a database consistency check. Grant chose the third. I opened the audit archive on an offline records laptop. The recovery report from Friday listed the database dependencies, the failed login sequence, the retired storage reference, and the checksums captured during the test. "Use this validation set," I said. Grant glanced at the report. That was the slow test. It was also the last verified restore. He took the pages from me. For the next 4 hours, Grant and his engineers worked from the very report he had called Paranoia. They corrected the old storage reference before beginning. They established separate local access before connecting identity. When the uniform database came online, Thomas scanned an actual garment tag from an actual root cage. The screen returned the correct customer, wearer, size, and billing status. "Usable," Thomas said. Grant checked the wall clock. 1:26 in the afternoon, nearly 9 hours since the alert. He did not call it a successful recovery. The sorter came back first. Sheila released clean uniforms from the rail in controlled batches, while plant employees fed backed-up garments through the scanning stations. The tunnel washers restarted at 2:10. Dispatch entered handwritten rote changes from the driver's paper copies. Every change had to be checked against the copy retained at the plant. Tomás assigned 4 people to the work and stood behind them, reading route numbers aloud until his voice went rough. Payroll took longer. The restored deduction table was stale again. Renee found it on step 3 of her 9-step checklist. Grant stared at the discrepancy on her screen. "The backup timestamp is current." "The table isn't," she said. His engineer traced the job and found the same surviving reference to the retired array. It had been corrected in the test procedure, not in the production backup job. Renee looked at Grant. "Your new ownership model would like access to the configuration." He gave it to her. They recovered the missing table from an immutable database copy and reconciled every control total by 9 that night. Renee signed the validation sheet only after a second payroll employee checked her work. I took the completed sheet to the audit room. The yellow timer sat on top of the archive cabinet, still running. 16 hours, 37 minutes. I stopped it and wrote the time on a blank recovery card. Luke found me there. His shirt was marked with dust from the loading bays. He leaned against the doorframe while I filled in the systems tested. "We lost the evening production shift," he said. "I know. Tomorrow morning, too. Sheila needs the rail cleared before she starts a full load." I wrote 2 production shifts in the impact box. "All the hospital routes completed," he said. 1 hotel delivery was short. 2 food service customers got late pickups. Document them. Tomás already did. The archive room was narrow enough that Luke's presence seemed to change the air pressure. He looked at the timer, then at the card. Grant said the attack got through a service account. They'll investigate. He also said the concentration of access made the recovery harder. I put down my pen. Luke rubbed his palms against his pants. I kept thinking about what you said in the kitchen. We said a lot in the kitchen. About who pays. A cart rolled past outside, its wheels squeaking in a steady rhythm. I was asking you to pay for peace, he said. I called it family because that sounded better. I looked at him. He was waiting for forgiveness in the same quiet way he had waited for me to surrender. I loved him enough to recognize both. I can't fix this conversation tonight, I said. I know. You sleeping in the guest room hurt. I know. And you don't get to stand beside me after the system fails and act like that settles where you stood before. His mouth tightened, but he nodded. What can I do? He asked. Make sure the morning crews know the plant is closed until Sheila releases it, then go home and sleep. What about you? I have an insurer update at 7. I'll drive you home after. I can drive. I know. He looked at the recovery card. I'd still like to. I let him. Dana Kim joined the 7 o'clock call with an incident specialist and a claims representative. Grant reported the service account compromise, containment steps, restored systems, and business interruption. Dana asked for the recovery timeline. Grant looked toward me. I read it from the card. Alert at 4:37. Identity restoration begun after access verification. Uniform tracking usable at 1:26. Plant restart at 2:10. Payroll validated at 9:03. And the backup test records we requested, Dana said. Did they assist the recovery? Grant's pause lasted perhaps 2 seconds. Yes, he said. The most recent report contained the last verified dependency map and validation set. The answer entered the call recording without decoration. Dana confirmed that the current policy remained active while the incident was evaluated. The records we had uploaded before the event showed the known gaps, our mitigation efforts, and the insurer's pending conditions. The claim would still require review, and the renewal would still require a full demonstration, but there was no question about whether the evidence had been disclosed. After the call, Celia asked Grant and me to stay. She sat at the head of the same table where he had laughed at my timer. Morning light showed every fingerprint on the dark monitor behind her. Did you know the production backup still pointed to the retired array? She asked him. No. Should you have known? Yes. Was the 54-minute demonstration a full recovery? Grant looked at the tabletop. It restored the required database. That wasn't my question. No. Did you tell the insurer it met the recovery target? Yes. Celia turned to me. Did you send your contrary memo? I put it in the audit archive. Grant told me not to submit it. Why didn't you send it to me directly? The question struck where I had no polished defense. Because you had already chosen him to lead remediation, I said. I documented my refusal. I didn't want to use being your daughter-in-law as a second reporting line. Celia considered that. And because, I added, I was tired of proving that a professional answer wasn't a family attack. Grant shifted in his chair. Celia's eyes stayed on me. Fair. Then she looked at her son. You protected the migration because you believed the company needed the savings, she said. You also protected your succession plan, and you stopped knowing which one you were defending. Grant's face went still. I can correct the remaining issues, he said. You will help correct them. You will not certify them. Mom, Celia, in this room. He closed his mouth. Technology, governance, and recovery authorization were removed from Grant that week. Celia brought in an interim technology officer to oversee the remediation and separated infrastructure operations from risk acceptance. Grant stayed to complete the migration because he knew the architecture better than anyone, but he lost his direct reports, his control owner status, and the operating promotion everyone had treated as inevitable. His office emptied slowly. The golf photograph went first, then the black notebook. The banker's box remained against the wall until one of his former engineers carried it to the new technology office. Celia moved my role under finance, so completed tests could not be canceled by the department being tested. She offered me the title of director. I'm not taking it until the claim review is finished, I said. Her eyebrows rose. Why? Because Grant will say this was the point. Grant is going to say many things. So am I, later. For once, she did not turn my answer into a decision of her own. Luke moved out of the guest room, but he did not move back into our bed immediately. He replaced the dripping faucet. I fixed the bedroom fan. We ate several quiet dinners that did not solve us. The first useful thing he did was decline Sunday dinner. He told Celia we needed a weekend without the company at the table. He told Grant himself. When Grant accused me of isolating him from his family, Luke said, "Naomi didn't make this call." Then he came home and told me exactly what had happened, without asking for credit. That helped. 30 days after the incident, we ran the full recovery demonstration. Renee led it. At 6 a.m, she placed the yellow kitchen timer in the middle of the conference table. Thomas sat beside a real root cage with a handheld scanner. Sheila monitored the backup appliance under normal cooling conditions. Grant joined from the technical side of the room and answered questions when Renee asked them. The environment began unmounted. Credentials were retrieved through the approved emergency process. Payroll completed all 9 validation steps. At 1 hour, 23 minutes, Thomas scanned a uniform tag. The correct account appeared. Renee pressed the button on the yellow timer. Its buzz stopped. Dana accepted the evidence that afternoon. The policy renewed with its full limits and a higher premium that reflected the incident, not a penalty for missing records. Finance approved the remaining recovery work as an operating requirement instead of an optional technology expense. Renee filled out the recovery card and brought it to my office. Do I get to write "not paranoia" in the remediation box? No. Hostile work environment. Write "all targets met." She did, then signed her name and handed me the card. I carried it into the audit room. The previous results were already in the cabinet. 3 worsening drills, the incomplete demonstration, the 16-hour incident, every uncomfortable number still intact. I placed Renee's card on top. The yellow timer fit beside it in the drawer. I closed the archive, turned the key, and heard the quiet click.